The pediatric ward of St. Catherine's. Hospital had the kind of quiet that only came late in the evening, after visiting hours ended and most of the children had finally drifted off to sleep. The green walls were painted in soft, calming tones, and the equipment hummed gently in the background. A constant reminder that this was a place where small bodies fought big battles. Elena Martinez moved quietly through the ward, checking on her patients with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd been doing this for 5 years. She was 29 years old, with dark hair pulled back in a neat bun, and she wore teal scrubs under her white nurse's coat. Her face carried the kind of exhaustion that came from double shifts and too little sleep, but her eyes remained kind and attentive. She approached room 314, where one of her favorite patients was staying. Little Sophie Bennett, just 5 years old, with light brown hair and eyes that still sparkled despite the IV in her arm and the hospital gown she wore. Sophie had been admitted 3 weeks ago with complications from leukemia, and Elena had become attached to the brave little girl who never complained, who always had a smile ready, who clutched her stuffed lamb like it was her most precious treasure. Elena knocked softly and entered. Sophie was awake, and her father stood by the window, his back to the door. He turned as Elena entered, and she saw the strain on his face, the father who'd been keeping vigil for weeks, who barely left his daughter's side except when Elena gently insisted he go home to shower and sleep. David Bennett was probably in his mid-30s, with dark brown hair and wearing a light blue button-down shirt and dark pants. He looked like he'd come straight from an important meeting but hadn't bothered to change, because his daughter mattered more than appearances. Elena had learned that he was a CEO of some tech company, though he never acted like it mattered. Here he was just a father, terrified and devoted in equal measure. "Hi, Miss Elena," Sophie said, her voice weary but happy. "Did you come to check my temperature again?" "I did, sweetheart. And to see if you need anything before bedtime." Elena took Sophie's temperature and checked her vital signs, making notes on her chart. Everything was stable, which was the best they could hope for right now. "Miss Elena," Sophie said as the nurse adjusted her blankets, "my daddy says there's a big party at the hospital next week for all the doctors and nurses who help sick kids. Are you going?" Elena felt her stomach tighten. She knew about the fundraising gala. It was the hospital's biggest event of the year, where wealthy donors came to support the pediatric wing. All the medical staff were invited, encouraged to attend, to meet the benefactors and show appreciation for their contributions. But attendance came with expectations: evening gowns, cocktail attire, the kind of clothes that cost more than Elena's monthly grocery budget. "I don't think so, honey," Elena said gently. "I'll probably be working that night." "But you have to go," Sophie insisted. "You're the best nurse ever, and Daddy's going because he helps give money to the hospital. You should go together." David cleared his throat, looking embarrassed. "Sophie, Miss Elena has her own plans. We can't just—" "But Daddy, you said you didn't want to go alone. You said all those fancy parties make you tired, and Miss Elena is nice. She could go with you and then you wouldn't be lonely." Elena felt her cheeks burning. This was exactly the kind of situation she'd been trying to avoid. "Sophie, that's very sweet of you, but your father probably has someone else he'd like to take to the gala. And besides, I really do need to work." She finished her checkup quickly and excused herself, feeling mortified. As she left the room, she heard Sophie whisper, shouting to her father, "You should ask her properly, Daddy. Like a gentleman." Elena tried to put the conversation out of her mind as she continued her rounds, but it kept nagging at her. The truth was she wanted to go to the gala. Not for the fancy food or the networking opportunities, but because it would have been nice to feel like part of the team, to celebrate the work they all did together. But she couldn't afford it. Her salary as a pediatric nurse was decent, but not great. And after sending money home to her mother who was struggling with medical bills of her own, after paying rent on her tiny apartment, after covering student loans from nursing school, there was barely enough left for basic necessities. A formal dress suitable for a hospital gala? That was a luxury so far out of reach it might as well have been on the moon. She was at the nurse's station, updating patient files, when David Bennett approached. Elena looked up, surprised to see him outside his daughter's room. "Mr. Bennett, is everything okay? Does Sophie need something?" "No, she's fine." She fell asleep. He paused, looking uncomfortable. "I wanted to apologize for what she said earlier. About the gala. She's 5 and doesn't understand social boundaries yet. It's fine, Elena said quickly. Kids say the darndest things. David nodded, but he didn't leave. Instead, he seemed to be working up the courage to say something else. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why aren't you going to the gala? Sophie's right that you should be there. You've been incredible with her, with all the kids on this ward. You deserve to be celebrated. Elena felt her face flush. Mr. Bennett, I appreciate that, but I just have other commitments. Is it because you don't have anything to wear? The directness of the question shocked her into silence. She stared at him, and he quickly continued. I'm sorry if that's too personal, but my daughter is perceptive, and after she fell asleep, she told me she thinks you don't have a pretty dress for the party. And I know what nurses make. I know it's not enough for what you do, and I thought maybe that's why you're not going. Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She was simultaneously humiliated that her financial struggles were so obvious and touched that this man and his daughter had noticed and cared. Mr. Bennett! David, please. David, I appreciate your concern, but I'm fine. I don't need charity. It's not charity. David pulled something from his pocket, an envelope. This is an invitation to the gala in my name. I'm a major donor to this hospital, which means I get a table. And I'd like you to be my guest. My date, if you will. Elena shook her head. I can't accept that. Why not? Because it's inappropriate. I'm your daughter's nurse. There are boundaries. You're right, David interrupted. There are boundaries between a nurse and her patient's family. But here's the thing. Sophie is being transferred to City Children's Hospital next week. They have a specialist there who's going to oversee her treatment. So technically, in a few days, you won't be her nurse anymore. You'll just be someone who was incredibly kind to my daughter during the hardest time of our lives. He placed the envelope on the counter. The gala is in 10 days, after Sophie's been transferred, so there's no professional conflict. Just one person asking another person if they'd like to attend an event together. And if the issue is attire, I'd be happy to arrange for a dress. Not as charity, but as a thank you for everything you've done for Sophie. Elena stared at the envelope. Why are you doing this? David was quiet for a moment. Do you know what Sophie said to me tonight? After you left? She said, Daddy, Miss Elena has sad eyes sometimes. Like she's tired and worried. I think she needs someone to be nice to her like she's nice to us. His voice cracked slightly. My 5-year-old daughter, sick with cancer, worried about whether her nurse is being taken care of. And she's right. I've watched you for 3 weeks. I've seen how you work double shifts because the ward is understaffed. I've seen you use your own money to buy books for the kids. I've seen you stay late to read to patients whose parents can't be here. And I've seen how you never complain, never act like it's too much, never treat anyone like they're a burden. He met her eyes. So yeah, maybe this is partly selfish. Maybe I want to go to this gala with someone who actually understands what this hospital does. Someone who isn't just there for the photo opportunities and tax write-offs. But it's also because Sophie's right. You deserve to be celebrated. You deserve one evening where someone takes care of you for a change. Elena felt tears spilling over. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Come to the gala with me. Let me arrange for a dress. Let yourself have one nice evening. And maybe if we're both lucky, we'll enjoy each other's company enough to make it not feel like an obligation. Elena looked at this man. This father who'd spent 3 weeks being nothing but kind and respectful, who'd never once treated her like the help, who'd noticed things about her that most people overlooked. And she thought about Sophie, that brave little girl who worried about others even while fighting for her own life. Okay, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll go with you. David's smile transformed his tired face. Thank you. Can I get your contact information? I'll have someone reach out about the dress. And Elena? He paused. This isn't charity. This is me, very selfishly wanting to spend an evening with someone whose company I've come to value, okay? Elena nodded, not trusting herself to speak. The next week was a blur. Sophie was transferred to City Children's Hospital with a care plan that gave her family real hope for the first time in months. And 2 days after the transfer, Elena received a call from a boutique downtown. Miss Martinez, Mr. Bennett has arranged for you to come in for a dress fitting. Would Saturday at 2 work for you? Elena almost said no, almost backed out entirely. But something made her agree. The boutique was elegant and intimidating. The kind of place where the dresses in the window didn't have price tags because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford them. But the woman who greeted her was warm and professional. Mr. Bennett explained that you need something elegant but comfortable, something that reflects who you are rather than who you're expected to be. Let's find you something perfect. They did. A deep green dress that somehow made Elena look sophisticated and approachable at the same time. Not too formal, not too casual. Just right. How much is this? Elena asked, dreading the answer. Already taken care of, the woman said with a smile. Mr. Bennett has an account here. And before you protest, he said to tell you that he recently received a very generous bonus from his company, and he's choosing to spend some of it, ensuring his date for the gala. Doesn't have to worry about anything except enjoying the evening. The night of the gala, Elena stood in front of her bathroom mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress fit perfectly. She'd done her hair and makeup with more care than she usually bothered with, and she felt beautiful. For the first time in longer than she could remember, she felt like she deserved to be at the party rather than working behind the scenes. David picked her up promptly at 6, and the look on his face. When she answered, the door made every moment of self-doubt worth it. Elena, he breathed. You look stunning. Thank you. You clean up pretty well yourself. The gala was everything Elena had imagined and nothing like she'd feared. Yes, it was full of wealthy donors and important people, but David never left her side. He introduced her to everyone as Elena Martinez, the pediatric nurse who saved my sanity and possibly my daughter's life. He made sure she was included in every conversation, made sure she had food and drink, made sure she was comfortable. And Elena found herself not just enduring the evening, but enjoying it. David was funny and self-deprecating, telling stories about his early days starting his company, admitting to mistakes and failures with refreshing honesty. He asked her about her work, really listening to her answers, treating her nursing expertise with the same respect others showed the doctors. Can I tell you something? David said as they stood at the edge of the dance floor. I've been coming to this gala for 5 years. Every year it's been a chore. Shake hands, write checks, make small talk with people who only see me as a bank account. But tonight has been actually enjoyable, and that's entirely because of you. Elena smiled. I think you're giving me too much credit. I'm not. You're genuine, Elena. You care about people, not what they can do for you. You work in a field that pays too little and demands too much. And you do it because you believe it matters. And spending time with someone like that, it reminds me why I started my company in the first place. Not to get rich, but to solve problems and help people. Can I tell you something? Elena said, finding her courage. When Sophie suggested you ask me to this gala, I was mortified. I thought it was inappropriate. But also, I was embarrassed that I couldn't afford to come on my own, that my financial situation was so obvious that a 5-year-old noticed. Elena! Let me finish. What I realized tonight is that there's no shame in not having money for luxuries. There's no shame in working hard at a job that matters more than it pays. And there's no shame in accepting help when it's offered with kindness. So thank you. For seeing me. For making me feel valued. For giving me an evening I'll never forget. David took her hand gently. Elena, I don't want this to be the only evening. I'd like to see you again. Not as Sophie's father and her nurse, but as two people who enjoy each other's company. Would you be interested in that? Elena felt her heart racing. Are you asking me on a real date? I'm asking if you'd give me a chance to prove that tonight wasn't just about gratitude or obligation, that I genuinely like you and want to know you better. So yes, I guess I am asking you on a real date. What do you say? Elena looked at this man who'd seen past, her scrubs and exhaustion to the person underneath, who'd noticed when she was struggling and offered help without making her feel small, who'd spent an entire evening making sure she felt included and valued. Yes, she said. I'd like that very much. Their first date was coffee. Their second was dinner at a modest restaurant where they talked for hours. Their third was a visit to see Sophie at City Children's Hospital, where the little girl squealed with delight and declared them the most perfect couple ever. Over the months that followed, as Sophie's health improved and Elena and David's relationship deepened, Elena learned things about him that made her fall harder. He donated anonymously to causes he believed in. He treated everyone from janitors to board members with equal respect. He worked hard, but never at the expense of time with his daughter. He was flawed and human and honest about both. And David learned about Elena's strength, her compassion, her quiet determination to make a difference even when the system worked against her. He set up a scholarship fund for nursing students. He advocated for better pay and conditions at the hospital. He fell in love with a woman who taught him that real wealth wasn't measured in dollars but in lives touched and kindness shown. A year after that first gala, David proposed to Elena in Sophie's hospital room. She was there for a routine checkup and was officially in remission. Sophie was their most enthusiastic supporter, insisting she should be the flower girl and already planning the wedding in extensive detail. At the wedding, when the minister asked if anyone objected, Sophie stood up and announced, "I don't object. I told Daddy a long time ago that Miss Elena should be his date, and I was right. They're perfect for each other." Elena laughed through happy tears, and David pulled both his daughter and his new wife into a hug. And everyone in attendance smiled at the family that had been born from a 5-year-old's observation, and a father's willingness to see the extraordinary person behind the nurse's uniform. Years later, Elena would tell people that she'd almost not gone to that gala, that she'd been too proud to accept help, too convinced that her circumstances defined her worth. And she'd think about how close she'd come to missing out on love, because she couldn't afford a dress. But Sophie had seen what Elena couldn't see herself, that she deserved to be celebrated, that her kindness and dedication made her valuable beyond measure, that the right person would see past the financial struggles to the beautiful person underneath. And David had been that person. The CEO who'd asked a struggling nurse to be his first date to a gala, who'd made sure she felt like a princess, not because of what she wore, but because of who she was. Who'd proven that sometimes the most meaningful relationships start when someone looks past the surface and sees the treasure underneath. Because real wealth isn't about money. It's about recognizing value in others, offering help without diminishing dignity, and building a life based on mutual respect and genuine affection. And sometimes all it takes is a brave little girl, a father willing to listen to his daughter's wisdom, and a nurse who finally allowed herself to believe she deserved to be cherished. That was worth more than any dress could ever cost.